thrilled that Dr. Jeremy Kemp, who teaches at San Jose State in Swiss, is going to speak to us about evaluating library spaces through simulation. It's a report on a work in progress, gathering video walkthroughs of exemplary young adult library spaces from across the U.S. and Canada and recreating them in Second Life for further study as part of a 3-year grant project from the IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services.
It's a great honor to be here, and I really appreciate everybody's time and the time and effort it takes to sit down for a presentation like this and come into the Second Life, and I really appreciate everybody's time. I'll talk a little bit about the grant background, the timeline for the project, also talk about things that we actually have accomplished, outcomes and products that we've actually built and delivered. Dr. Bernier's been working on this project with young adult spaces since 2008. He did a leadership and planning grant for the IMLS, and then that turned into a full-fledged, one of the larger grants ever awarded to the school. And there are, over time, 8 or 9 people involved during the 4-year period. I myself work with Lori Harris, who is a research assistant on the project. And Lori Harris is our RA. Julie Whitehead graduated out of the program. Video cameras went out to the librarians in those libraries and the young adults, and we asked them to walk around those spaces and capture the important things, the interesting things about those spaces. So we got back a large number of videos. And then from those videos, the final project and the part that I'm involved in was to take those videos and then to recreate them here in Second Life in walkable spaces. So the virtual representation, we were able to create 6 different spaces and have them walkable, turn the videos into textures, into objects, and I'll show you I'll show you a lot of pictures of those spaces. Okay, before I show you the spaces, I want to talk to you a little bit about some the precedents for this sort of thing. So using Second Life or virtual environments or simulations to gather feedback from the public, to gather feedback from people who are interested in the spaces so that they can be improved. So probably the first and earliest example of this is Landing Lights Island, which was put together by Beth Novak at New York Law School. And she wrote a book, I think it's called A Wiki Government, and she put together a sort of a play place, a 3D wiki that allows people to come and design and save those designs and talk about them with each other. Next thing, and this is much more modern, it's 2013, Daniel Livingston, my collaborator in Paisley, worked with 2 or 3 different academics to have students from different campuses in his university. So he works for the University of Western Scotland. He had students from his Paisley campus, from his Hamilton campus, all get together and do collaborative building projects. The students didn't have to be with each other in order to log in and collaborate in rebuilding or proposing improvements to Paisley. So let me show you a few pictures from that paper. And this is Paisley in Second Life. The next tool they used to model a portion of Paisley. So this is Paisley Town Hall and Paisley Abbey on the left, and a section of Paisley Town Centre. The same high street in Paisley, Scotland, modeled in Second Life. So students got together, did these collaboratively in order to propose alternate visions of the future for a small town in Scotland. Okay, so let me now introduce you to one of the artifacts. We talked about the video that librarians had created. We sent out the video cameras. Actually, go ahead and take a minute or two. This should take a couple of minutes, and watch this video.
The windows on the outside were painted free of charge by a local artist. The paintings on the wall were created by another local artist who also happens to be the library director's son-in-law. This room too has been furnished and decorated in a cafe style, providing the young adult magazines. We also have the library's collection of graphic novels.
All right, so the objects in that database, we had about 770 data points, different items. Let me give you an example of this. So you can see this is like just a portion of our spreadsheet. You can see that we have on the left-hand side opinion. So the person narrating the video has given a positive opinion, generally, given the coder has seen that as a positive thing. In this case, it was very useful, and that's what the person said in the video. And the scene for the video was inside the first room in the center. Category: computers, item types, catalog. The red arrow points to the actual item that you saw in the video, which is the window, the teen sort of drawn window. Looks a little bit like this. You saw that in the video. So we captured that in a screenshot and we put it in our database. And the interesting thing about this item is that it marks the place explicitly as a teen space. So there are a number of signage and posters and things that said teen spaces, and we looked at all of those items and tagged them as indicating that the space was a teen space. All right, so here's an example of all the different construction jobs that we did, mostly Julie Whitehead, who graduated in last year. So here's an example of, in the top left, you can see light streaming in a window. It's very difficult to do in Second Life, but it's important in a library space. There are computers. It's very, very simple to do in Second Life, actually. Those were all purchased. We could purchase those items and put them in the spaces. Then here is some manga and some magazine shelves. Some of these had to be built from scratch. Some of these were purchased, as well as here's a computer workspace. And you'll notice very meticulously the individual pieces of signage in the spaces was recreated. Then I thought this was really interesting too. The little orange, I don't know if you can see it, the little orange guy holding up a sign. We captured all of those and placed them in the Second Life spaces as well. Here's an example of a banister and a stairwell to the bottom floor. The wooden bookshelves. Now, the purpose for this was we wanted to create an artifact. We wanted to create something as close as possible to real life so that we could gather feedback from people. And that was the final purpose of the project, was to gather feedback and to see if we were able to gather feedback from people in many, many different locations who wouldn't, be able to physically come to a library, but would still be able to give us feedback on that library. That was the interesting thing about the project. So you can see these sketches. These are Julie Whitehead's sketches, where she laid out the different parts of the library and the different textures that she needed to place, and then she created these textures. students in our 203 course. So we have a course, a skills class, and a program orientation, and it goes over things like the learning management system, personal study skills, library resources, APA style, most of it technical. So of the several hundred people that go through this class each term, I sent an email solicitation to them. And here we start to get some interesting survey results, the results of this study. So I got 40 back, which was a really abysmal response rate, less than 5%. On average, they took the survey 8 minutes. We were able to take those people and send them off to random locations. So Joe comes, says, yeah, I'm willing to do the survey. The survey sends him off to the first location without him choosing anything, right? So we were doing teleporting. Then Susie comes, she fills out the informed consent. She goes off to the second location, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. So we were able to randomly split the group up among these six spaces. So that's the first, an innovative thing here about being able to survey people in Second Life and do it with a random sampling. We were able to send people off randomly to one of these 6 spaces. Now, you remember when I showed you the window that said teen, the orange and yellow thing? So what we did was we took the exact same space, right, that had all the signage that said teen space, welcome to teen land, blah, 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 and explicitly identified the space as a teen space, and then we took all of that off. Right? We had one space that was generic, that didn't say teen, it didn't have any indication. And the survey language, none of the survey language talked about young adult spaces or any of that. They sent half of the people to these spaces that had no labeling, and we sent the other half of these people to spaces that were explicitly teen spaces. So now we've done something with a quasi-physical space that you can't accomplish any other way, right? So I can't build an entire library and then take that exact thing and build an entire library and have them slightly different, right? I can't control for very small variables, but you can in Second Life. And that's the interesting thing. So what we did was half of the people knew they were going to a young adult library, and half of the people thought they were just going to a library. We asked them, mark all of the things that you think that you would like to improve in this space, including space for personal items, entertainment technology, like put in a video game, that sort of thing. Noise separation, so that activities don't disturb other people. Rebuilding the walls, making it nicer, or tools for media production. So multimedia computers, that sort of thing. These are some other things that we offered. You could improve the wireless connectivity, have some more space for performances and music, maybe have youth-produced art, right? Remember, half of the people looking at these options don't know that this is a young adult-focused library, right? So if you order this by the younger respondents, what the younger respondents thought were important, this is what you get. But notice that both the younger and the older folks agreed pretty much that wireless connectivity was important. About half of each group. Equally important for older and younger respondents. Pretty much. But look at this. This is really interesting. For the folks who thought, okay, so this is the people who went to the libraries that were labeled teen spaces, called labeled, and then the folks who went off to the generic spaces without any of the labeling and we didn't tell them they were teen spaces. They're just looking at a generic space, right? Look at the last item. Better wireless connectivity for iPads. What? Look at that. Only a third of the people who went to libraries that were labeled as teen libraries suggested better wireless connectivity. But a large majority, 65% of the folks, who went to generic libraries. We didn't tell them they were teens. They didn't have any of the teen signage. They said, we need better wireless connectivity. Isn't that interesting? I think it's what it's showing, and I'm definitely I'm not an expert on young adult spaces by any means, but it's interesting to me that folks who go to a space that is explicitly for a community, teens, have a very different set of priorities for things that need to be improved. So what that tells me is that Second Life virtual environments have the ability to elicit some strong differences in what people suggest and differences in how they evaluate space. So in this sense, I think this is starting to show, it's very preliminary, starting to show that Second Life has the ability to, with basically two identical spaces, to elicit strongly different reactions from people just based upon how you label the spaces. So I want to show that just marking something as a teen space has a strong correlation to people making different suggestions for improvement. I thought this was really interesting.